When shadows speak, breaking free from narcissistic abuse. Have you ever looked in the mirror and wondered where you went? That moment when you realize the reflection staring back at you belongs to someone you barely recognize anymore. It's like watching yourself disappear in slow motion, a magic trick no one applauded. I had the profound honor of interviewing Joycelyn Watson, a true warrior healer whose groundbreaking work helping survivors of narcissistic abuse has transformed countless lives. Her insights form the foundation of what I'm sharing today. Joycelyn isn't just a practitioner, she's a revolutionary who walks into the darkest corners of human experience and somehow brings light without diminishing the gravity of what happened there. Her methodology has created safe harbors for those who believed they would forever drift in the storm of someone else's making. The invisible wounds of narcissistic abuse run deeper than most can see. They're the shadows that follow you into rooms long after the person who cast them has left. They're the voice in your head that isn't yours, but somehow became louder than your own. They're the flinch before the compliment, the apology before the opinion, the exhaustion without physical cause. For Black women, especially, those who've been told to be strong, to endure, to carry on regardless, these wounds often go unacknowledged, as if admitting pain somehow diminishes the strength we've been conditioned to project, as if vulnerability were a luxury we haven't earned, as if our worth were measured by how much we can withstand rather than by how authentically we can exist. But what if strength looked different than we've been taught? What if true power lies not in endurance but in healing, not in silence but in speaking, not in carrying on but in putting down what was never yours to carry in the first place? This is the question at the heart of Joycelyn Watson's work. This is the question that changed everything for Amy Middlestat. Amy's story begins like too many others. A Black woman raised in foster care who endured over 20 placements before turning 18, 20 different homes, 20 different sets of rules, 20 different versions of conditional love. And through it all, cycles of narcissistic abuse from the very caregivers meant to protect her. The result? Years of confusion, self blame, emotional exhaustion, complex PTSD symptoms rooted in childhood emotional neglect. Amy described herself as a ghost haunting my own life, present but not really there, seen but not truly known. We've all felt invisible at times, haven't we? That sensation of speaking but not being heard, of existing but not mattering, of giving everything but receiving nothing in return. It's like screaming underwater, all that effort, all that desperation, and yet the world above remains undisturbed. For Amy, healing began when she sought trauma informed therapy, when she joined survivor led communities focused on emotional literacy, when she began sharing her story through writing as a form of advocacy. Today, Amy has reclaimed her sense of self worth. She was honored with the Presidential Outstanding Student Award at her college for resilience and leadership. She became an active voice, empowering others to heal authentically. But here's what strikes me most about Amy's journey: she didn't just survive, she transformed. She took her pain and turned it into purpose. She took her silence and turned it into speech. She took her invisibility and turned it into influence. And isn't that what we're all seeking? Not just to overcome our past, but to use it as fuel for our future. Not just to heal our wounds, but to help others heal theirs. The truth is, narcissistic abuse doesn't just happen in homes, it happens in boardrooms too, in cubicles, in corner offices with impressive views, behind closed doors where power imbalances thrive like bacteria in a perfect petri dish. In my conversation with the Joycelyn, she shared about virtual support groups formed by Black professionals specifically dedicated to recovery from workplace related narcissistic abuse. These individuals reported anxiety disorders, loss of confidence in professional settings due to gaslighting and manipulation by supervisors or colleagues exhibiting narcissism. Many felt isolated due to stigma around mental health within their industries. The double burden of racial microaggressions coupled with narcissistic tactics created a perfect storm of self doubt. Who would believe me? One member asked. I'm already fighting to be seen as competent. If I speak up about this, I'll be labeled difficult or too sensitive. Another shared, I started keeping a journal of interactions because I thought I was losing my mind. The gaslighting was so subtle, so professional, so deniable. Sound familiar? That creeping sense that you're simultaneously too much and not enough? That exhausting vigilance, recording conversations, saving emails, documenting interactions just to maintain your grip on reality? These virtual meetings, facilitated by trauma informed therapists, provided education about healthy boundaries, validation exercises, and coping strategies tailored for high stress environments. The results were remarkable: improved mental health outcomes, reduced anxiety and PTSD symptoms, rebuilt career confidence through peer accountability and support networks. Several members advanced into new leadership roles post recovery. One launched an initiative training companies on recognizing and managing toxic work dynamics affecting people of color. What began as healing became revolution. This group was founded after several members realized traditional HR channels failed them, prompting grassroots organization rooted in cultural understanding. They set a precedent for culturally responsive support models addressing unique pressures faced by Black professionals navigating workplace toxicity. Let that sink in for a moment. When systems failed them, they created their own. When doors closed, they built new ones. When no one would listen, they spoke louder and to each other. They transformed personal healing into institutional change. But what about intimate relationships? What about the narcissistic abuse that happens behind closed doors in the space where we're supposed to feel safest? The 12 South Recovery Treatment Center serves diverse clients, including many Black women recovering from intimate partner relationships marked by severe emotional manipulation and control. These women reported intense feelings of fear, confusion, and emotional numbness resulting from long term exposure to gaslighting and self doubt imposed by partners with pronounced narcissism traits. One woman described it as drowning while everyone watches you swim. From the outside, everything looked fine, even enviable, but inside, she was disappearing. He never hit me, she said, so I didn't think I had the right to call it abuse. But every day I lost another piece of myself until I couldn't remember who I was before him. The center offered personalized treatment plans integrating talk therapy, culturally competent care, and holistic practices like mindfulness and yoga. Clients learned practical skills such as boundary setting, self validation, and assertive communication. The outcomes: sustained improvements across depression and anxiety measures. Clients described feeling like myself again and regained agency over life decisions. One woman said, I used to think peace was the absence of conflict. Now I know it's the presence of self love. Another shared, the first time I said no without apologizing, I went home and cried. not from fear, but from freedom. The program was developed after recognizing standard domestic violence resources often overlook nuances specific to survivors dealing with covert, narcissistically driven harm, a gap especially acute among women reluctant to trust mainstream systems due to historical bias and discrimination. Numerous testimonials cite restored family relationships, newfound independence, and advocacy work begun post treatment. A few alumni now mentor others entering recovery programs themselves. This center pioneered a best practices model, blending clinical rigor with lived experience insights, inspiring similar programs nationally targeting underserved populations affected by hidden forms of psychological abuse. Through my conversation with Joycelyn Watson, three critical truths emerged. First, healing is possible. Recovery from narcissistic abuse is not some distant dream, but a tangible reality when you seek trauma informed support and commit to self compassion. Second, rebuilding self worth is essential. The journey involves reclaiming your identity, rebuilding self esteem, and learning that you are not defined by past pain or manipulation. Third, community matters. Connecting with supportive communities, whether through therapy, survivor groups, or peer networks, is essential for breaking isolation and fostering lasting transformation. These aren't just nice ideas, they're lifelines. They're the difference between surviving and thriving, between existing and living. So, where do we go from here? What's the path forward for those still caught in the web of narcissistic abuse or struggling to find solid ground in its aftermath? I challenge you today to become a revolutionary in your own life, to declare independence from the voices that were never yours, to stage an uprising against the lies you were told about your worth, to commit an act of radical self reclamation. Start small if you must. A whispered truth, a boundary held, a moment of saying no when you've always said yes, a tear finally allowed to fall, a truth finally allowed to rise. The journey from victim to survivor to thriver isn't linear. It's messy and beautiful and terrifying and worth every uncertain step. It's a rebellion against everything that tried to diminish you. It's a love letter to the self you're rediscovering. As Joycelyn Watson so powerfully reminds us, healing isn't linear, but it is inevitable when we give ourselves permission to begin. The world needs your voice, not the one you were conditioned to use, but the one that's been waiting underneath, the one that speaks your truth, the one that knows your worth, the one that refuses to shrink or apologize or disappear. The shadows may have spoken for too long, but they don't get the final word. You do. And when you speak, when you truly speak from that authentic place of reclaimed power, you don't just change your life, you change the world. One truth at a time, one boundary at a time, one act of self love at a time. This is how we heal. This is how we transform. This is how we create a world where shadows no longer speak for us because we found our own voice and it is glorious. Thank you.